Today I have something pretty interesting to share with you. I have a summary based on a document produced by a top retired military analyst. This person has been fulfilling this role for years and was at one point the only military analyst to the government. What we are all interested in is what is going to happen this year, 2019. We have the elections coming up in May. That is if they are indeed going to happen, since the ICC has already announced that the earliest that they could host an election would be in November. Tini Groenewald, the former chief of the SADF in those days, once said in confidence that if Cyril Ramaphosa had ever, or rather was ever elected president, whites would suffer badly. It is interesting to note that F.W. de Klerk once declared that he knew the ANC had cheated by more than a million votes in the 1994 elections. The political process in South Africa has, under Zuma and now under Ramaphosa, become a total embarrassment to any self-respecting person. What is happening globally now is a shift to the right of the Overton window. Now, for those that don't know what the Overton window is, I can only explain it like this. If you took a horizontal line on a page and marked the center with a dot, then a little either way to the left and to the right, you made two more dots, and then again two more dots further out on both sides, and two more. The center dot would be, or rather would represent total neutrality. As you moved out to either side, you would be moving either to the left or to the right. The further from the center you go, the more leftist or rightist you would be moving, until you get to the outer limits of the line. That would be the extremists in both directions. The right would be your conservative people, and the left would be your liberals, and often the socialists and communists. If you took another piece of paper and cut a small hole in it and placed it over the line, if the hole coincides with the center of the line, we say that the Overton window is indicating that an overall centrist mood of the population is prevalent. If it moves either to the left or the right, we say that the Overton window, reflecting the average mood of the population, has either shifted left to the liberal side or to the right to the conservative side. Okay, let's continue with the contents of this report. When the EU was involved in the Middle East, they expected democracy to take hold. What actually happened was a total collapse and a failed state. If truth be told, democracy in Africa has been a farce and has not succeeded at all. It has failed everywhere and is now failing in South Africa. During the Cold War, or rather during the Cold War years, and when the ANC needed support from outside, it was the USSR that financed and equipped the ANC. In Africa, there are essentially only two countries left that are in so-called struggle mode. These are South Africa and Zimbabwe. Of these two, Zimbabwe is already falling apart and is in the process of total collapse. The ANC has quite literally governed the country into a state of internal dysfunction. There is only one way for them from here on out, and that is total implosion. Before Zuma, the blame that had been placed on the shoulders of the whites was apartheid. Everything that was wrong with the country was blamed on the whites and apartheid. But when Zuma came into power, he managed to shift that blame from apartheid all the way back to as far as 1652, the year the whites set foot on what was to become South Africa. They set foot in the Cape. Now the guilt trip that whites have been put on extends as far back as 1652 and not the days of apartheid anymore. Decolonization has become nothing but a black and white thing and little else to drive it. Through this new interpretation of history, white monopoly capital was born. They would actually love to go after those who they can confiscate the most from, the super rich, or rather, white monopoly capital. Unfortunately, the majority of so-called white monopoly capital is not in the hands of the whites, but in Jewish hands, and therefore they will not go after them. So what can we expect in the next 3 years under Ramaphosa? Ramaphosa's biggest challenge will be how to handle the legacy left by Jacob Zuma. Zuma left a government that was morally and financially bankrupt there is barely a single person in the ANC that is not or has not been under investigation for crimes ranging from theft, murder, involvement in cash-in transit heists, corruption, and everything in between. How he handles this will determine the outcome. Expropriation without compensation is high on the agenda, but we should not forget that the government already has approximately 4,000 farms in its possession that were obtained over the years by the willing buyer, willing seller principle. These farms were supposed to have been redistributed to claimants years ago. What really happened was that over 90% of claimants at the end of the day elected to take the money instead of the land. Of the farms that were redistributed, which were not many, almost all are now lying in ruins. It should be noted that some of these farms were very successful and profitable concerns that were handed to the blacks, literally lock, stock and barrel, a going concern, a very successful going concern, and are today lying in total disarray. With all the empty promises that the ANC has made to the ignorant masses such as free education, the land and a free healthcare system, there is no doubt that they will win the elections in May this year, as gullible as they are. After the elections, when promises are not met, the only alternative the government will have is to blame the whites and hope that the masses buy into it. I have no doubt they will. To distract people from the failures of the ANC, the government, or Ramaphosa, will have to again bring up the old favorite, decolonization. Whites will be blamed for every single thing wrong in the lives of black people again. This will again create more racial animosity, which has been their aim all along anyway. It should be remembered that the Communist Party in South Africa, which just happens to be the second eldest communist organization in the world, was originally a white organization. Gradually concessions were made and people of other races were slowly allowed to join. At one point, a colored member by the name of Laguma suggested to the USSR at the time that South Africa become a black republic. This suggestion was very well received and the order was issued in 1928. We all know what has happened since then. We've had a serious bout of government decay, which is now turning into government collapse. The ANC will continue to decline in capabilities, and a decline will almost certainly accelerate after the elections. What this means is that government is finding it more and more difficult to achieve its own internal goals. Even the systems that they themselves need to function are falling apart. They are totally unable to control their own institutions and structures. It is for this reason that farms, land, and any other institutions that they get expropriated will not be utilized properly, simply because the ANC will not have the ability. Now this is not a bad thing for whites. I will explain in a minute. Everything that gets expropriated will not be utilized because the ANC will simply not have the ability or capability due to their own internal systems that have collapsed or are in the process of collapsing. Ramaphosa will not be able to rectify the level of decay that Zuma left behind, and a government implosion is inevitable. This implosion will destroy any systems that might still be working to any degree. If the power grid does collapse, and that is highly likely, it could take as long as 6 months to bring back up again. This total dysfunctionality is not necessarily a bad thing. If the white population can find a way to live with these failed systems by being prepared for them, as long as we can find a way to survive without them, without power and therefore water, the masses will soon turn against the government. As soon as the masses begin to see that their predicament is not the work of the whites, but the work of their own government, the assaults on the government will start to grow every day. Democracy will lose its relevance and meaning when survival becomes more important. White people will need to take a long, hard look at their position in all of this and make a decision to reposition themselves to gain more power. The word transformation in South Africa actually and literally translates to a shift in our role or function in the South African society, as well as the whites departing from the economy. That is, with our skills and knowledge. You see, what we have now is a system that is totally bankrupt of knowledge and skills. If you look at the public service sector as an example, There are more than enough public service officials, but there is precious little service delivery happening on the ground. They have literally shot themselves in the foot and sabotaged themselves. I will explain why in a minute. When the government cannot deliver what the voters were promised and voted for, the people become the enemy of the government. Anarchy is inevitable. As this collapse progresses and the government allocates budgets for service delivery, but no service delivery takes place, the government will try to put as much blame on the whites as possible to take attention away from their own failure, and therefore transformation will intensify. So-called democracy will have died, as the failure always has been since 1994. It should be noted that although we talk about democracy, the ANC is actually a communist government. As I said earlier, whites need to reposition themselves in society, and depending on how we do that, we could either be a stabilizing force or a destructive force. What do I mean by this? The ANC has always used the race issue as their main driver. Its main aim was to create animosity and conflict between black people and white people. To achieve these goals, systems such as BEE and affirmative action were implemented. The only effect of this is a current system with no capabilities to fulfill its mandate. They have shot themselves in the foot by driving out all of the whites with the skills and the knowledge. The internet started to become popular in 1994, coinciding with the ANC taking power from the National Party. As the whites have been forced out of the economy since then, they have slowly made a transition to this new technology. White people are part of a global economy now, and those that did not leave South Africa are changing to smaller business models or different business models, such as security, education, health, and farming. We are and have been unknowingly separating ourselves from a totally dysfunctional system and starting to form our own functional society. The more control and functionality the government loses, the more functional and organized we are becoming. The white population are the only ones with the skills and knowledge able to rescue this country, and there is no way that the government can take this away from us, because the asset sits inside of our heads. Destroy us and you destroy the knowledge base too. We arrived here in 1652 with nothing and built this country. Only we have the ability to do this. Only we have the ability to save this country from total collapse. After the elections in May 2019, Ramaphosa is going to need to find people with the skills and knowledge to pull this country out of the death spiral that it is in currently. This could possibly be our opportunity to demand a new deal from the government. In theory, we should be able to demand our requirements because there is nobody else who is capable. The wealth in this country will no longer be decided by politicians in parliament, but by physical contributions external to parliament and government. This new society, if it wants to be successful, will have to be knowledge-based and driven society. Ramaphosa will realistically have two choices. Either he will carry on in this course he is on and lead the country into failure with his disastrous policies, or he can utilize the knowledge and skills base of the white population and save South Africa from certain collapse. You see, they were too short-sighted to see that their policies, specifically on education, which was supposed to uplift the black people, in effect sabotaged their own systems by turning out people who just did not have the skills or the knowledge to perform what was needed to succeed. Now we have a system that does not possess the skills or knowledge to save itself. There are, in fact, certain sectors in the white population that have been more successful under black rule than under white rule, because they have chosen sectors where their knowledge base could not be done without at all and could therefore name their price. So in essence, government has collapsed and is not functional. Whether Ramaphosa will choose to use the white knowledge and skills base or not, I very much doubt. They might even use the situation to blame the whites even more and discriminate against us even more. However, this will only lead to the acceleration of the collapse. If you think about it, the white population have more power than the black population because we are more functional. White people are in a position to take control of our destiny, and there is no better time than now. We need to stick together and work together. If we do this, we could essentially beat them at their own game. They do not have the capabilities or the knowledge base to enforce any restrictions on us economically. We need to take the game out of their hands. It is my opinion that unfortunately, because of the incredible hatred that black people have for us whites in general, they would rather starve than see a white succeed and the country saved from collapse. Now is the best time to take control economically, because that is the field we have no competition in. The consequences of us not taking action now are very serious for us. Once total collapse has happened, international aid will flood this country, but only for the black people. The whites will not be helped at all. If we are not in a position to help ourselves, we are going to have a very tough time in this country. It is my opinion that if we don't make use of this opportunity now, we will never recover. We should rather leave them to their own devices than try to help them right now. The more dysfunctional they get, the more power we will have. Trying to beat the ANC at the polls is a total waste of time. In future videos, I'm going to be concentrating on what we as the white population can do to begin taking control of our own destiny and at the same time starving the crocodile that is trying to eat us. If you got any value from this video, please hit the like button and share this video on other social media platforms. If you have not subscribed yet, hit the subscribe button and also click on the bell icon to get notified when I upload future videos. Also see links in this description for joining the USAF movement to create a separate nation. We already have enough members to qualify as the second smallest independent country in the world should we declare independence. Also, if you would like to help me keep the lights burning and food on the table, I have provided a number of ways for local and foreign people to be able to donate to my channel. Thank you to those that already have. I really do appreciate it very much. Until next time, be safe out there and cheers.